Hello and welcome back. In this section, we're going to be painting hair with our brush tool. Now, this is a wonderful technique that can really help with so many different situations. Hair is made up of thousands of little strands, each that has their own direction, and that's what makes hair relatively difficult. And in a lot of situations, you can get by simply painting those strands back with the brush tool. Now, before we get started, I do recommend using a pressure-sensitive tablet. This is a Wacom Intuos Pro Small tablet, and we've got a great free tutorial all about this tablet. So you can just type in Wacom into the search bar on Florin and learn how I set up my tablet and some of the advantages of it. Now, if you have a tablet, great, this is a perfect time to use it. If you don't, not a big deal. I'm going to show you how you can use your mouse as well. Let's go ahead and start off by opening up our image in Photoshop. So here we are, we're in Chapter 2, Section 2, Painting Hair, and we're going to click and drag this image right into Photoshop, or you can just hit Open if you've gone through the Photoshop dialog. Let's hit F4 full screen, and our subject here is we have a couple of tools we're going to use. So our subject, especially in areas like this, we have dark colored hair on a light colored background. So we could use select color range, which we just learned, to cut that hair out. And we also have this hair is in focus while the background is out of focus. So we're going to be showing you some tools to take care of that as well. Now, to start off, let's just do a very rough job cutting out our subject. We're going to be using the lasso tool. So let's hit L for our lasso tool, and we're going to go right around this blanket. And we're just going to do a rough job cutting our subject out. Now, when it comes to the hair, basically I'm just going to be painting here, or basically making our selection slightly to the inside of our subject's hairline. Okay, we're just going to kind of come right up there. Just kind of do a general selection here. There we go. Oops. You can hold the space bar down and move around. I just made a little bit of a mistake, but that's okay. We'll fix it up. So we're making a general selection to kind of get most of our subject cut out. Again, I'm not worried about each individual strand of hair at this point. Let's click on our layer mask, and here we can see we've done a very rough job of cutting our subject out. Now we're going to grab a adjustment layer. We'll go to solid color, and same like our last example, we'll just pop that right underneath our subject. Zooming into our image, we're going to take a look at a couple of things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on our layer mask. I'm going to go to Window and down to Properties. There we go. Let's just turn that Properties window on. Now this property window is available for individual layers, like maybe a curves adjustment layer, a levels adjustment layer. It's also available for your layer masks. And you have two options which are very helpful here. One is your density. And density just kind of allows you to see through your layer mask a little bit. And this is going to be super helpful when it comes to painting in hair. Okay, so density is what we're going to use. And you can also use feathering to feather the edge. We're not going to use that as much, but density is very, very helpful. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about painting hair with the brush tool. So we'll just bring our density back up to 100 for now. I'm going to make a new layer, and let's hit B for the brush tool. Now, I'm going to show you how to do this with a tablet as well as with a mouse. So whatever tool you're using, you won't feel left out. You can do it with either. It's just a bit easier to do with a tablet because tablets have pressure sensitivity, and also using a stylus like this is just a little bit more natural for drawing motion than with a mouse. I find a mouse just to be a little bit more restrictive. But we'll show you how to do both. We're just going to choose a color here. Let's choose a nice bright color that we'll be able to see. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is make my brush smaller. Now you can do that by holding your open and closed brackets. So open bracket makes our brush smaller. Okay, closed bracket makes your brush larger. There we go. That's one way to do this. You can right click and choose to change the size of your brush as well as the hardness. Okay. My favorite way to do this is with a keyboard shortcut. That keyboard shortcut is, if you're on a Mac, hold Control and Option. You can click and drag from the left to the right to make your brush larger and smaller. And if you drag up and down, it will make your brush harder and softer. So you can make a small hard edge brush, or you can make a large soft edge brush. It's very easy to do that. my goal here is I want to make a small brush, and I want to bring my hardness to about 40 to 50%. But I want to make my brush size to be about the same size as the hair in my image, because we're going to be painting hair. So my recommendation is just to kind of like do draw a couple brush strokes and use your open and close brackets when you get to about this size, and that's just going to kind of help you see about the width of the hair. And this is looking pretty good. So if I right click, we can see I've got a size of 4 pixels in this image. So if you're following along, 4 pixels is the way to go, and a hardness of 42. Now, I am using a pressure sensitive tablet, so let's go ahead and show you how that works. Alright, we'll just delete all that real quick. We're going to go to Window and down to Brush Settings. Now here with our brush settings, there we are, we have an option called Shape Dynamics. And when that's checked, what it's going to do is it basically allows me, the harder I press with my brush, the larger my brush is going to get, and the softer I press, the smaller it's going to get. Okay? So you can see, and now I could go, if I had a really large brush, you'd really be able to see it. Soft and then hard. You can also choose your minimum diameter here. So you could have a very small brush when you don't press hard, and a large brush when you do press hard. Okay. Now, when it comes to hair, we're going to bring our brush down to 4 pixels again. So let's just type in 4. You can just right click and type that in there. Okay. Here you kind of want to be able to like get really small at the end, right? So that's, you want it to just kind of like fade off, right? Hair's kind of come to a point. So that's important that it gets really small at the end. That's why we have our minimum diameter set to 0 and our control set to pen pressure. So as I have less pressure on my brush, you can see, here we go. Let's just make this layer invisible. So as I have less pressure on my brush, it just kind of gets smaller and trails off, and you wind up with something that actually looks like hair. Okay, now my next setting here is transfer. So that's checked. Let's take a look at what that does. I have my flow jitter turned to pen pressure as well. And what this means is when I'm using a tablet, if I don't press hard, it's not going to be very dark. The harder I press, the darker it gets. So it's twofold at this point. Okay, so we have our transfer and our shape dynamics turned on. So if I press hard, it's going to get more ink and it's going to be larger. If I press soft, less ink and smaller. So that all kind of combines to a really nice dynamic brush stroke. And you can see all of these brush strokes, whether they're large or small or visible, less visible, all of these are just with this exact same brush. Let's go ahead and save this brush out because it works really nicely. So we're going to go here to our menu here. We're going to go to New Brush Preset, okay? And we're just going to call this Flern Hair 1. There we go. And that's 4 pixels. Now, I'm going to go ahead and provide this brush. So we're going to go to Edit and down to Presets. I'm going to go to my Preset Manager. There we are. And our Preset Manager will actually allow me to save different brushes, okay? So for instance, this is our brush here. I can go ahead and hit save. There we are. And we're just going to put this here in a new folder called Photoshop Brushes. That's a hairbrush for the Wacom tablet. And let's hit done. And with a Wacom tablet, again, it's just very easy to do this. You can do it with a mouse as well. So let's hit Control or Command A and hit the delete key, and now let's go to my mouse. So with a mouse, you can see we got a different problem here, right? All of these look the exact same. It doesn't get smaller as I paint. Unfortunately, this is just they all look the same. So we're going to make a couple of changes. Let's go to our shape dynamics here, and our size jitter, we're going to change this down to fade. Okay, so fade will basically start off large and get smaller. Now, I'm creating these tiny little marks right here, and you're like, that's not helpful at all. It's not. So what we need to do is bring this number up. So this number is the distance at which it's going to fade out. So let's bring this up to about 200. Hit enter there. And now we can see I'm able to create something that looks a little bit more like hair. All right, maybe we'll just make this 600. There we go. So you can see it's kind of fading out, it's getting smaller, which is super helpful. There we are. Now unfortunately, it only does it on one side, okay? It allows you to fade out, which is super helpful, but one side is going to be like a hard edge. So you just have to start on the inside of your subject when you're using a mouse, okay? Transfer, we can still have this set up, but our control here we're going to have set to fade as well, okay? And we just want to match this, so we'll hit 400 as well. So there we go. Our brush just gets softer and smaller as we paint, and this is with the mouse. Okay? If you want a larger brush stroke, a longer brush stroke rather, just go back to your shape dynamics and then change this number. Maybe we'll make this 800, and let's just clear off that. You're going to see it's just going to get a little bit longer. Now, there's one final way to do this, which you can actually stroke a pen path with a brush. The nice thing about stroking a pen path with a brush is that it will start and end at a fine point and get larger in the middle, just like hair does. So even if you don't have a Wacom tablet, you can do this method and it will start and end at a small point. So if I have, let's say I click here and then I click and drag there, okay, this is my pen path. We're going to right click on our pen path. Oh, it's not in there. Let's go to our paths, select my path. I'm going to right click here. We're going to go to stroke path, okay? So stroke path, here's my pen path right here. That's the path right here, okay? Now your tool, you can choose to stroke this with any tool. We're going to use our brush tool, and I'm going to have simulate pressure turned on. So let's hit OK there. There we go. And as I click off, you're going to see, there we go, it gets larger and smaller. So let's just choose our brush. Instead of fade, we're going to go back to pen pressure on both of these. Okay, even though we don't have a pen. Now, let's just clear this layer. Alright, our pen path again, we're going to right click and go to stroke path, and then our brush, simulate pressure, hit OK, and then click off of there, and you can see. So basically it's simulating what would happen if you were using a pressure sensitive tablet. Now this can actually be cool because you can get complicated strands here. There we go. Let's say we have, there we go. That is our path there. We can right click and say stroke path on that. Hit OK and click off. And you can see we can get some really nice movements there. So there are a lot of other uses for this tool than hair. But you can see if you need a hair to be exactly in this place and start small, get bigger, and small again, you can use stroke path. So a few different ways to do basically the same thing. So now that we know those different tools, let's get back to our image and start painting some hair.